Hey, what's up? Dusk the Viking here. Welcome to my new player guide for Evil Dead the game. Evil Dead is pretty straightforward on the surface, but there's actually a lot of little mechanics in this game that can be really confusing for a new player. So I'm going to explain all those, explain the core gameplay, and then give you a couple of gameplay tips, hopefully all in a very short video. First, let's look at classes. You have 4 classes in Evil Dead. Leaders, which are well-rounded characters that provide auras that buff their teammates. Each leader has their own characteristics. Warriors, which excel at melee combat and tend to have larger health pools. Each warrior has their own characteristics, some being more offensive, some being more defensive. Hunters excel at ranged combat using things like guns and crossbows. They have smaller health pools, but have the largest stamina pools to help make up for that. And last but not least, the support, which is probably the most complicated class to pick up at first. The support characters are all fairly different. They have a lot of unique character to each one of them. In addition, and this is the one thing about supports that most new players don't realize, when a support class, if you read right here on the side, drinks a Shemp's Cola to heal themselves, they also splash that heal onto every single nearby teammate. They won't heal their teammates for as much as they heal themselves, but it will be a significant amount of healing regardless. So if you can, it is often best to let your supports do the healing. Keep in mind though, if your support is getting hit a lot in melee combat, it might be hard for them to use the Shemp's Cola to heal everybody, as the heal can be interrupted by a melee strike. When a support uses an amulet, they will also splash that effect onto every single nearby teammate. However, unlike the heal, the amount of shield that you get from the amulet is quite a bit less for your teammates. This means that sometimes for warriors it's better if they keep a couple of amulets for themselves. Okay, now let's talk about the progression system. If you click on one of your characters, you will be brought to their progression page. Here you can see their skill tree. Every class has their own skill tree. This means all warriors will have this skill tree here, as Henry the Red is a warrior. All leaders will have the same skill tree, so on and so forth. In your skill tree, you get 1 point for every level that your character is. Level 25 is the maximum level, unless you prestige, which we'll talk about later. When leveling up in Evil Dead, you do get some experience points for playing the character. However, most of your leveling up will come from spirit points, which you will find up here in the upper right. As you can see, I'm at 0 spirit points, as I have recently spent all of them, but when you play a match or when you level up your profile, you will get a large sum of spirit points. When you have spirit points available on a character that can be leveled up, you'll have a prompt down here that will say press F to spend spirit points. You will then pour your spirit points onto that character and they will level up pretty rapidly. Next on the progression page, you have outfits. These are purely cosmetic and are obtained mostly through DLC and or Season Pass. Screamers are cosmetic flair. If a demon dashes through a survivor to scare them, this is the picture that will pop up for the demon. Hey, Post-Edit Dusk here. I realized after recording this that new players really don't have any use for a tutorial on the Prestige system, so I've decided to cut all of this out. However, I am going to keep this one section where I show you how to see what the actual stats on an ability is by clicking on the ability on the left-hand side of the page, then looking to the lower right to see what the values actually are. Before I move on to gameplay and tips for playing Survivor, let's talk about the different game modes. First, we'll talk about the missions. These are short single-player challenges, essentially, that you can compete solo. They're not co-op. These are purely a solo gameplay experience. They have continued to add more. At launch, there were only 5, and now we are up to 7. Playing these is a great way to get used to the game, as some of them are very challenging. I do have guides up for the first 6. Also, completing these missions will unlock storyline over here in the Extras tab. These help explain the lore of the game and how it ties into the actual Evil Dead universe. There is also the tutorial. That's self-explanatory. Finally, if you click on the play button, you can see all of the primary game modes for Evil Dead. Hey, Post-Edit Dusk here. I got a little too wordy in this section. Basically, the PvP modes are the core of the Evil Dead game. The Verse AI modes don't offer much challenge, they're just there for practice. There is, however, also a private game mode where you can play versus your friends in a private match if you want.
Listen closely. This is Professor Raymond Noby, Department of Ancient History.
First, let's take a look at the UI. Under your character portrait, you'll see a small white bar. This is your stamina bar used for sprinting and dodging. Then you see your fear bar, which when your fear is at 0, it will be gray, but as you gain fear, it will gain red starting from the left and progressing to the right. You see an eyeball marker on that bar. That lets you know when the Evil Dead can see where you are on the map. If you gain enough fear, you will reveal yourself to the Evil Dead. However, keep in mind, if the Evil Dead is in the same compound as you, they'll be able to see you anyway if they're close. And of course, if the fear bar feels even further up, you will be eligible for possession, where the Evil Dead will get to take control of your character and potentially attack your teammates. Above that, you have your health bar. That is the thick white bar that will deplete as you take damage. And above that, you have your shield bars, which you can gain by using amulets. The upper left part of the screen is where your mini-map is. The center top of your screen is what stage of your quest or objectives you are on, and to the upper right, you'll have some heads up on the information for your quest. Here, it tells us where the next map fragment is. In the case of this game, it is the area known as Harry's Houses. When it comes to actual tips, I am not a big fan of overloading new players with a ton of things that they need to be doing and probably don't understand anyway. So I'm just going to explain how you should be looking at the game instead. Evil Dead is a very fast-paced game. You will not always have time to level up to your maximum level and find the perfect weapon of choice. It is a game where you have to move quickly because it's a race against the clock. The more time you spend looting and looking for that perfect favorite weapon, the more the demon player can level up. If the demon player gets very high level, they're going to have an extremely large advantage over you, and that's almost certainly going to cause you to lose the match. As a new player, it's almost inevitable. You are going to lose some matches. Don't worry too much about it. Again, there is a lot going on in this game, and it is going to take you a little bit to figure it out. But take this example game that I'm playing right now to heart. I start out in an area, and I struggle to find any chests. I can't get much pink F, and I'm struggling to level up at all. I prefer the sledgehammer on Henry, but I only need a blunt weapon for my particular build to work, so I settle for the mace. After a little while, I decide that I have to cut my losses and get on helping my team with the objectives. However, that's not always the right call. It depends on your character and your role on the team. For example, the blacksmith character kind of revolves around looting and collecting scrap. You may need to spend a little bit more time, and you may have to rely on your teammates to carry the first early game objectives. However, keep in mind that the goal here is to keep the demon as low level as possible. So there is one tip that I will give you. This is the biggest tip that I can give any new player, and that is do not fight the demon if you don't have to. If the demon shows up and starts spawning in a ton of Evil Dead, and you've got a car nearby, jump in the car and drive away. The more you fight the Evil Dead, the more they delay you, and just simply by causing any amount of damage at all will give the demon player a lot of experience points that they can use to level up while at the same time delaying you. That's pretty much all I want to say for the new player guide. I hope you found it helpful, and keep a lookout for more in-depth guides. Also, demon players, don't worry, I'll have some guides out for you as well. Don't forget, that really helps out the video, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to check out my sponsor, Sneak Energy, all the information in the description below.